In a quiet Norwegian lake, a mysterious serpent swims, the pride of local residents.
The boat was just lifted up. Then we were scared.
It's known as Selma, the monster of Seljord.
She suddenly saw the thing.
We could see waves being produced pretty violently, so nobody really knows anything about what's down there. Quite scary, I guess.
Norway's Seljord is a peaceful village of 3,000 people resting on the banks of Seljord Lake. Here, 200 kilometers or 125 miles from the nation's capital of Oslo, nature reigns supreme. The Seljord Lake is the jewel of the region. It's 16 square kilometers or 6 square miles, kept pristine by local residents. And they take pride in the presence of a creature that arouses much debate. Selma, a lake monster by turns amusing and terrifying. This is the case for Stig Ellingsen. While testing a new boat on behalf of the Red Cross, the former military man had the scare of his life.
The Red Cross has just bought a new boat, like a diving boat. The motor was new, so we should drive very slow and take only the tour. And we was in the middle of the lake when it's deepest. It's like we slipped up and then it's go like this. And we heard the motor was up in the air, and then it's fall down again. And we think that it was on timber. Started up with the boat again and drive about 3 meters, and then the boat was just lifted up. Approximately about this up from the lake. We were 3 people on this boat. It's about 200 kilos with the motor. So it was very heavy. Then we were scared. Just started up the motor and drive into the land as fast as possible. We felt that it was something in the lake who is living and have lots of power.
Jan Sunberg, the mayor of this small town, is particularly pleased to have so polarizing a creature living in Seljord Lake.
Seljord is a small place, a small municipality, but we have 700 square kilometers. So we have a bit space around us. We drive around the lake when we are going out of Seljord, and we look out to see if we can see the sea serpent. People have seen it also for hundreds of years. 200-300 years ago, we have stories about this phenomenon. We take a bit advantage of it because it puts Seljord on the map, but we don't have the tourist machine like in Loch Ness.
One of the region's biggest draws to outsiders is a summer camp suit on the lake. Its manager, who is also a part-time teacher, has a passion for the monster. Although she's never seen the creature, she hopes with all her heart to meet him one day.
My grandfather owned the farm, which now is the camping. My parents, they started to make the camping ground about in the middle of 80s. My husband and I started running it in 2006. I think we are really lucky to have the legend or the sea monster. We are sitting here every morning eating breakfast, and we are looking out and see if there is something. So I really hope that I will one time see the large thing coming up. It's not necessary for me to see the hole with all the bumps, but I can see one large one, and then yes. I hope so. I'm sad about it, but I haven't seen it. Even if I have the view and I really look for it, I always have the explanation of what I see. I have met lots of people who have told me that I've seen it. I've heard people just wearing on the beach, or maybe they're sitting in their caravans and watching out, and then they see something. One of my students, she was at the tower, and she caught it on movie. something strange, really long. She really believes that she has caught a sea serpent. They were watching out, looking, of course, for the sea serpent. I guess all people visiting the tower are doing exactly that. And then she suddenly saw the thing, and she caught it on movie, and they showed it to me, and I think it was really interesting. Too many people which I trust, and I think they are. It's not drunk people from the pub. It's just normal people on vacation or driving, or they say that they have seen something, and I trust that they have seen something.
The one in charge of Seljord's future was luckier than Salfred.
I have seen something, yes. I have seen these. It may look like waves. They are moving like a whale up and down, and I saw like buckles on the sea. So, and then the one in front disappeared, and a new one came up behind. And then, you know, when the head goes down, the first one will disappear, and the buckle will move backwards until it disappears behind. So, you know, it has a special way of swimming. Where did they come from? According to the observations, the only explanation is that it is a serpent, a sea serpent.
Over the centuries, there have been about 500 witnesses claiming to have seen the monster of Lake Seljord. For her part, Salfred Bjorg watches the lake carefully every day in search of clues that could lead to the monster.
The home of the legend, the serpent, Sjøormen. That's the name, Sjøormen. That's what we call it. I'm looking for changings in the water, because now today it was really flat, so it's easy to see if something's changing. I'm looking for different kind of colors. I'm looking for especially waves. I'm looking for, it can be really flat, really quiet, and then something can suddenly comes up. The owner of this camping caravan, they were sitting here, Per, and the neighbor over there. He saw something white swimming underwater, and then up again, and then straight ahead.
Peter Fjagesund, professor of literature at the University of Telemark, is interested in the folklore surrounding this monster. According to him, the way the monster is said to swim contributes to its mystery.
It's just called the Seljord serpent, usually. I think the most common portrait is really like a big log, like a big, sort of the length of a proper tree, you know, and also with vertical movements, the classical sea serpent movement, which is, of course, rather peculiar because these vertical movements belong to mammals and birds, whereas reptiles and fish move horizontally. So it suggests that it's not a reptile or a fish.
The monster's description varies in small ways depending on the witness, but everyone agrees it has the body of a serpent of about 15 to 25 meters or 50 to 80 feet in length. Its head is a cross between a snake and a horse.
And then it's usually dark or black or brown, something like that, and a sort of thin neck. I met people that claim to have seen it, yes. Something big, then up to 50 meters, some claim. So there must be quite a view for those who have seen it. And very many people claim to have seen it. Not many say that they have seen the sea serpent, but they have seen something in the lake that is mystical. Some people claim to have seen the head as well, with big black eyes and looking like an elk, a moose, or a cow, or something like that, with the big black eyes. So, quite scary, I guess. It was scary when you grow up hearing about it. I haven't been looking for it, but I've written about people that claim to have seen it, so I've seen their photos. If they have photos, we look at it and print it in the paper, and then it's up to the readers to decide if it's the sea serpent or what it is. There must be something, since so many trustworthy people claim to have seen it.
But in 2011, one particular sighting galvanized public opinion.
We had one story, and at the front page 4 years ago, two people in a chopper flying over the lake. It was worth letting them tell their stories. This is the article of the people in the helicopter that claimed that this was the sea serpent. And they claimed it changed direction when the helicopter flew above it. So they described it as something big that moved a lot of water. It was something they hadn't seen during their 20 years working from the air.
I hope there is a sea serpent, but I don't know. I look out of the windows and sometimes down on the beach, and there is a tower down on the beach. There I can see. I think it's really long and big, and I think it's blue or green or gray, and it has a big mouth with big teeth.
I have seen something twice, which is rather peculiar. It was with an American friend, actually. We were driving along the lake. This was in 1982. The lake was totally calm. And we drove along there and came out of a bend and suddenly saw something swimming about, say, 50 yards from the road, from the shore. And we stopped the car, I walked outside, and there were two big eels swimming side by side in horizontal S's. We thought we could see a sort of fin at the back of both of them. And then they just slowly disappeared. We agreed they would be 4 to 5 meters long, something like that. Definitely a lot bigger than an ordinary eel, which shouldn't be more than 1.50 meters at the very most. And we couldn't really see what it was, but we could see something was happening right there.
In Seljord, it's worth your while to visit the Sea Serpent Tower. Standing 17 meters or 55 feet high, it offers an ideal vantage to keep a lookout for the monster. But for the mayor, Seljord is much more than its lake monster. It is also a city rich in history and in perfect harmony with its natural surroundings.
I'd like to show you Seljord. Seljord is a small town or village. We have 3,000 people, and most of them live here in the center. We don't have much room down in the valley. Most of our area is up in the hills. I like to look up on the mountains, and I like to look down from the mountains, to look on the center here and to look out on the lake. Seljord is a small place, but it's central. It's central between the east and the west of Norway. And many people come to visit Seljord because of the fair that we have in autumn and the festivals in summer. Now behind me, there you can see a classical Norwegian architecture. It's from 1300 and something, so it's very old. It was built to keep food, because there were no refrigerators or anything, so they had to keep the food cool. And then you have these thick walls of logs who made it a bit cool inside. And you can see it is put on top of the rocks, so the mice would not get inside. So it's very valuable. We have to take very good care of it.
The Seljord monster legend dates back several centuries as well. In Norway, a country with a strong maritime tradition, sea monster legends are a part of their folklore.
All we know is that the first reports about its possible existence go back to about 1750. So before then we haven't really got any eyewitness reports or anything, but that's the first story. And that's actually a story about a man who was rowing 2 boats across the lake, very close to where I live actually, with one in tow. And the story says that the boat at the back was toppled by the monster. But then again, that is exactly the time when sea monsters were, along the Norwegian coast at least, were regarded as the most natural thing in the world. Stories about sea serpents go back to antiquity, so that's nothing new. I mean, they've always been around. If you look at medieval maps and so on, these maps are totally littered with sea serpents, sea monsters of various kinds. Norway is actually a very important country when it comes to sea serpents, because it's one of the first places where sea serpents were actually described in a way which we might call scientifically. The 1970s was definitely a time when there were more sightings. That was a sort of transition in a sense, because before the 70s, few people had, locally at least, talked about it, or anyway, had really talked about it. But from then on, it became a kind of national possession, you know. I mean, it's sort of the nation, the country as a whole, began to, got to know about it, and it became a sort of well-known phenomenon. And from then on, I think, again, that the local people who have seen things have been more willing to come forward and talk about it.
In the Seljord region, stories of the monster are passed down from generation to generation.
My great-grandmother was on the beach and she washed her clothes.
And then the serpent came up, and of course she was angry. No, she was afraid, but also maybe more angry.
She kicks it with her washboard.
And it was separated into 2 parts.
Many people see the head.
I guess it was the face was laying still laying at the beach, and the other part went out again.
Stig Ellingsen is preparing to return to the waters where some unexplained force managed to raise his 440-pound boat. This is the first time he's dared to make the trip.
So this is a full scale of the lake. We are about here now. Yeah, we went here, upside, follow this one on the lake, and come over here. And about here, I think it was happening for us. The lake is so mysterious. It's dark and deep. It's a mysterious landscape too. It's very nice to be here. See this part. It's you know, in the summer when the mostly people of see something out there.
As you can see now, you will see something on the water. That it's also something that looks like, for some people, sea serpent. Yeah, it was a bird. You can see the waves now. They're quite interesting because it's no waves on the other side, but here you see the waves. And that can also look like serpents.
The lake's reputation rests on more than just its monster. In the summer, people come from all over Norway to fish for trout and perch. But on this autumn morning, it's a different kind of catch that interests Stig and his crew. They are about to arrive at the place where Stig had his remarkable encounter.
It was like this the day when we was driving with the boat. It's like all like this. I have never been bathing in Seljord Lake afterwards.
Oh.
No. And I will not bath there either.
Over here somewhere?
Yeah, right ahead for this, you know, this parking place on the top. You see the signs? Right outside this cabins, we were lifted up 2 times, and the people who see this was on the top of the road where you can see the signs. So they stood up and saw what happened outside. Yeah.
And that's also a famous place for seeing the serpent because it's a nice view there and people standing there and then they sometimes see it.
We didn't believe that it was a sea monster, you know. We don't think about the sea monster when you drive here. But afterwards, when you have driven to it, you think about it.
The average depth of the lake is only 50 meters or 165 feet, but in some places it is much deeper. So there is plenty of room to hide a giant monster.
This is the deepest place in the Seljord Lake. And if you can see the mountains, who is very high here, and it's falling down to the lake, so it's about 110 meters. Yeah. 150 meters. 50, yeah.
And in older days, they used river for transporting timber, and that's also one of the explanations for maybe some of the trees were ending up in the bottom, and they were rotten, and they're giving away gas. And when bubbles comes up, there can be silence, no waves, but suddenly one of the bubbles from the old trees can make waves.
It has power. We feel the power in when you get lifted up. It was not any timber, because if it hadn't been timber, we had driven into the propel and everything. But it was not that. As I say, I have no explanation about why that happened. But and it's happened 2 times. Then it's also scary. It was like, you know, slippery. Yeah. It was like soft. Yeah. And then if you have held a snake, yeah, you feel the power in it. It was like that when it was very strange feeling. The first and the second time it was like I feel I see a television the whales from the north of Norway. Yeah. It was like this. You see it and you feel it. It was a very strange feeling.
That's not the explanation I've heard before, that it's a whale.
Yeah, maybe it's a whale.
Yes, that was a new one. In the corner here, nearby the mountain, there's the place where my great-grandmother washed her clothes with this washing board. Sitting into the water and cleaning like they did in older days, and then the sea serpent came up. That's the first story I've heard about the sea serpent.
It would be great if you had seen something, but I think it's too cold. It's in the summer, yeah, it's the mostly of the observation. So, but it was very nice for me to get out again and look at the part or the point where we. It's you know, it's a lot of years since I have been there.
I will still eat my breakfast, watching out the view and cross fingers. Hope I see it someday.
This is a part of our history and a part of our living, that we have this sea serpent. That's what Seljord is known for, and it's very nice to have something like this.
Although he's covered many stories about the Seljord monster, journalist Øystein Øygarden remains skeptical. And despite the local enthusiasm for the legend, it's estimated a majority of residents share in his doubt.
I must admit I haven't seen a photo that convinced me that there is a sea serpent. Most of the people in Seljord haven't seen the sea serpent, and if you would ask them yes or no, is there a sea serpent, yes or no, I think most would say no.
Stig's best friend, the witness who believes he saw the monster, is also skeptical.
I've heard the saga of the sea serpent since I was a little girl. I don't believe in it. I'm one of the disbelievers, yeah. There's no logical reason that there should be a sea serpent in Seljord.
I haven't got a clue. I mean, I realize that the chance that there is any kind of big animal of that size in such a small lake is minimal. It's much more obvious to look for another solution, another answer to the question, but what that might be is totally impossible for me to say.
Even if you're seduced by the legend of the Seljord monster, scientists maintain that no satisfactory evidence has been produced to verify its existence.
Most of my work is with freshwater biology, freshwater ecology. I've seen big eels underwater, I've met mink underwater, which gives you a scare when they come full speed towards you. Nothing that would really surprise a scientist. It's a striking feature of all these lake monsters that they never caught, they're very rarely seen, and if they are seen, they're not clearly seen, they're not well documented.
It's not big enough, it doesn't have enough food, no one has ever seen a sea serpent.
From an energetic point of view, animals like this could not possibly exist. There's just not the food base.
I mean, obviously, if there is a monster there must be several, because they have to reproduce. And that's, again, where scientists would argue that this lake is like a bathtub, really. I mean, it's way too small for anything that size. You know, a family of those would need something far bigger.
They're big creatures, they live in very restricted habitats, relatively small lakes, and it would be more than extraordinary if you had such animals living in these lakes and you never seen them properly or you never found them. Another thing is that during the last glaciations, all these lakes, and this one too, was frozen solid for thousands and thousands of years. There's no way any creature could survive that. The ice melted here about 10,000 years ago. And certainly it could not have developed within that very short, from a geological and and biological point of view, very short evolutionary time span.
There's a great variety of different observations. Some of them have seen just big waves, others have seen something. I suppose some of the most interesting observations are the ones with something literally sticking out of the lake, something coming up like a head. That's what many people have seen.
It's depicted with a horse head sometimes, or a horse-like head. And that could easily be mistaken for moose, which is very common in this area. And I've seen it many times, swimming moose in lakes. And that could be mistaken as the head of a sea serpent, because usually you just see the head quite raised above the surface.
I believe that the ones who think they've seen a sea serpent believes what they've seen, but I don't believe that they're right. Simple as that.
The easiest solution is simply to say that you imagine things, you create in your mind an image of what it might be.
You believe in something that you've heard before. That kind of could happen also in the Seljordsvalnet or with the sea serpent here in Seljord. That the old stories have just glued to your mind.
You interpret whatever you see in a context. You interpret the things you see based on your previous knowledge about these things. And there's also wishful thinking. So there's a number of different reasons why people could believe they've seen something like this.
Is the creature in Lake Seljord more myth than monster? Some residents still prefer to believe in the supernatural aspect of their lake. Professor Peter Fjaggesund embodies this paradox. Although he is tempted to bow to the relentless arguments of science, he still believes he witnessed something supernatural.
My father-in-law was driving, I was sitting next to him, and I had the lake on the right. And I kept seeing these waves which looked a bit odd because they were going in sort of odd directions that didn't quite fit in with a boat that had been sailing on the lake or going on the lake. So, and then we again came out of a bend and saw this thing far out, 400 meters perhaps. But we could see waves being produced, you know, pretty violently. And that went on for a while, and the waves came into the shore, so there was no doubt that something was happening out there. And then again, it just slid under the surface, and we never saw it again. So nobody really knows anything about what's down there.
The monster of Lake Seljord is a seasonal phenomenon, mostly manifesting in the summer. It must be said that, in Norway, seasons greatly affect the population. And who knows, maybe the monsters. The summer days in this northern country are very long, and winter, well, winter is a veritable dark age.
Summertime here, you have daylight all night. Not like the sun is not up here. It's not midnight sun, but it hardly goes down just for a couple, 3 hours, and then it will get light again. So summer is when we live, and winter we go to sleep.
It affects you in a sense because you go to work when it's dark, you're inside most of the day, and when you leave from work, it's dark again. So it's basically dark for a few months, you know.
You use the summer and the autumn to collect, you know, everything, food, berries, hunting, everything, and you fill up your store, and then winter comes, and then you concentrate on just living and surviving the winter.
And once the summer comes, Seljord residents keep hope that the monster they've been hearing about since childhood will make an appearance.
Well, when you're born here, it's hard not to hear about it early. So you hear about the sea serpent before you start at school. It's part of our culture and history. for as long as I can remember, I've heard stories about it because these stories have circulated for years and years. So I didn't grow up exactly next to the lake where I've been living for the last 20 years, but I spent my summers at a lake just across the mountains from there, and I knew about this from childhood. You drive past this lake and you know there is something here. There is this unknown thing down there, and that, I think, touches everyone in a way which gives the whole place a kind of dimension. People came after the 70s, during the 70s and afterwards, people actually came from various places, even from abroad, to actually look for it, you know, the way it's happened in Loch Ness as well. And I think that's a big plus for the whole place.
If you live in Seljord and say that you have seen this monster, they look at you and are you an idiot? They don't want to talk about it. But in the last few years, people have been more open-minded about it and tell about it and show pictures and films and like this.
Stig is a sensible guy, a smart one, and he has an experience with a sea serpent in Seljord. And I think he believes strongly, and I respect him for that.
And Stig is no longer afraid to tell his story or express his opinions, even with his skeptical friends.
She doesn't believe me, so it's, I'm a person who I hope when I tell something, it's for the other part to believe or not to believe what I tell, but I want to be a trustful person. I have to speak more with her so I can tell her about this is true.
You want to convince me?
Yeah. Yes, convince you all the time.
I still don't believe in the sea serpent because I believe what you experienced must have come from a natural place.
And that natural explanation is that we were lifted up. But I don't know what it is. Yeah. But I think it's an alive, because you feel when something is alive.
Yeah,
it is.
But I agree that it has to be something in the water. But I think that all the old stories that have been told since we were little and for centuries about the sea serpent, it kind of infects your brain or makes you... Yeah. It sounds like a disease, but it's not what I'm meaning. But
thank you very much. A disease?
No, it's not. But because you have heard the stories, you automatically think that, oh, this must be the serpents. You have a name for what it is. Yeah. So you believe that it's a serpent instead of investigating other alternatives.
Yeah. But the time when this happened, I didn't believe in a sea serpent or anything. I have heard the stories also.
I agree that there has to be something in the Seljordsvalnet because of all the sightseeing and all the pictures and all the strange phenomena. I think there's something there. There has to be something there. But whether it's the water is behaving strangely because of currents in the water, or if it's other creatures, or there has to be something natural. But of course, there's something in the water. Many people have seen it. But that doesn't make it a serpent. That's the difference. It can't be 200 years old. It has to have kids, and it has to be a family. I don't think it's not big enough space for big creatures or several big creatures here. I haven't seen it and I haven't felt it. But I do believe that the people who have seen it believes themselves that they've seen it. I'm a person who has a difficulty believing in anything unless I touch it and I can feel it and can see it.
I don't have any hope that she will believe in it, but I think if she experienced by herself, okay, then you come back and say, yes, I believe in it now.
Whether it is myth or monster, the residents of Seljord all agree that the legend of the lake monster has had a positive impact on the area. In 1989, even the city's coat of arms was modified to honor the creature.
logo, municipality logo, the sea serpent. So we are a bit proud of it. Yes. And some people say that this is something the people here they have invented it for the tourism. But no, not like Loch Ness. They have been very good. We have not. Because we are modest people and no big tourist machine at all.
I think most people in Seljord are proud of the myth about the sea serpent, but and not all the people believe in it. But the myth they are proud of because it has made Seljord known all over the country and abroad as well. Seljord now within Norway is well known for being the place which houses lake monster, right? And some people might feel a bit ashamed about that and feel that it's a bit embarrassing. But I think lots of people think the opposite. It's something to be proud of. Whenever I meet people from other parts of Norway, their first question is usually, have you seen the monster?
Sometimes I go to other towns and speak to people, and where are you from? They ask me. I say I'm from Seljord. Have you seen the monster? No, I haven't. And then they laugh about it and make jokes about it. And I usually reply that, how many other towns of 2,000 people do you know the name?
I think it's attractive to talk about the sea serpent because it's folklore and it's a myth. And it's exciting. It's the same thing as the trolls or any supernatural phenomena. It's exciting, really.
Besides, Seljord has more than one monster legend to offer visitors. It is a city known for its gnomes, a popular legend in Norway that amuses tourists.
The gnome in Norwegian, a gnome is called tusse. And they are small, living under the surface of the earth. And in the old days, most people, I think, believed in the gnomes here in Norway. Here is a spot where there's no grass. There the gnome went down. At least that's what the saying is.
The mystery of the Seljord monster is always on the minds of locals who share stories and exchange theories. Stig Ellingsen admits to being stunned and hopes one day to understand what happened to him that fateful summer day on Lake Seljord.
I don't know what happened that day. I'm not sure. We didn't see anything, but we was lifted up 2 times, and that was enough for me to think that is something big down there.
An unknown animal that is in the lake. That's the only explanation I can find.
This monster to me is this fantastic phenomenon of something that we can't explain, and I like it that way. In a sense, I very much hope that it will never be explained properly, because as long as it retains its secrecy, its mystery, there's something to ponder about and think about for everyone.
I think it's a good story, but from a biological point of view, it's not possible. From a scientist point of view, if you really found a creature like this existing in a small, relatively small like this, it would be like a sensation, a Nobel Prize. It would be the most fantastic thing you could ever discover.
I have never seen something that I think, wow, that's the sea monster, that's the sea serpent. So I'm still looking for that.
And it's nice to have the mystery of that we have a sea serpent in the lake. And of course we wish all people to come and look for it, because it's really great to be here and look for it, and maybe you can see it sometime.
I think it's a good place for a monster, really.